Hello, DevOps people. Welcome to Full Stack Live. I'm Johan, the Prince Charming of DevOps. No, I'm Johan, the Monospace Mentor. Welcome to my office hour. Today, I haven't prepared anything because this stream is just for you. It's up to you to ask questions, and it's up to me if I can answer them. Because that's the whole purpose of this whole show today. You ask questions and I try to come up with something helpful in return. In order to do that, please go to qa.monospacementor.com, where you can anonymously, without any logins or any other shenanigans, add your questions to the board. I can pick them up, show them on screen, and I'll promise to come up with something that is remotely helpful. Other than that, let me think if there is any update that I'd like to provide you with. Well, yeah, there was at least the resolution of the strange issue I had with my Mastodon instance 2 days ago, where suddenly the only web node, and that's on me, that I had behind a Hetzner load balancer suddenly was flagged as unhealthy and therefore didn't get any traffic anymore. And so the instance was out for about 4-5 hours until I set up a second web node, and with a little bit of finagling I was able to add that to the load balancer, and it did actually get traffic, so that brought the whole Mastodon instance back. But I never, at least not in the first 24 hours, I never learned what the reason was why the old node was rejected, because all my tests said it's perfectly okay, it's reachable, web server is running, database connection is fine, everything. And late yesterday evening I got a response from support after I had submitted 2 support requests 24 hours earlier, and they explained that they had misconfigured a firewall, and that prevented the load balancer from reaching the web node, or at least the web node from reaching the load balancer. I think it was rather the other way around, the node, because I didn't see any requests even coming in from the load balancer, let alone requests getting responses back. So I think Hetzner blocked their load balancer from reaching my web node for some reason, and that then took the whole instance offline. It's good to know what happened, it's good to know that it wasn't my fault, but still leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in terms of reliability. But at least I can now, I guess, trust the Hetzner load balancer again and don't have to run my own load balancer node. After all, which I started building in yesterday's live stream. So yeah, I'll tear down the load balancer node that I launched yesterday, and I'll be staying with the Hetzner load balancer, because just for convenience sake, and also it's not for cost sake. A very small compute instance costs about as much as a load balancer, so it's a wash. Total Gibbs says that's kind of an annoyance, but glad your config was correct. Yep, it was perfectly working all the time. For some reason they seem to have changed firewall configurations, and that blocked out this particular node for some reason. I have no idea why. And speaking of support request answers, I also finally got the incident report from our provider who managed a Nextcloud instance for my business, which a week ago or so vanished from the earth, losing all data, and leaving us with nothing in terms of office collaboration. We had switched from Google for Business to Nextcloud, and chose to not run it ourselves because even though we run hundreds of Linux servers, we don't want to also run our own Office infrastructure, because that will always then be a distraction from our core business when our own self-hosted Nextcloud instance, a hypothetical Nextcloud instance, would go down. We would then divert our attention to that Nextcloud instance and try to get that back online so that our team assistant has access to our files and all that stuff, so that people can actually arrange calls on our calendars and things like that. So we chose to choose a professional provider for that. And yeah, last week or so, we realized, okay, all we're getting is a 503. So I contacted support, and a little bit later there came an answer. Yeah, we lost all your data, including backups, and we are really sorry. Which I have to say was interesting. Thankfully, both I and my business partner had set up the Nextcloud workstation client, so we had all files synced to our workstations. And speaking for myself, I also had a backup of that folder, so nothing was lost. That was important. Even my calendar entries stayed in my calendar apps because they couldn't sync with Nextcloud anymore, so they were frozen in time. And that allowed us to switch to a different Office solution with a provider whom we've also picked to host our email in the future. I can only assume that they'll be more reliable and have things better under control. And I also complained to our old Nextcloud provider that I had expected an incident report much earlier, and I didn't get one by beginning of this week. And hello, Frackberg, how you doing? I hope you're doing great with your new and improved front end. Face is cold. I can't imagine. You must feel every little draft. That's amazing. So just to give everyone an update, Frackberg did a charity virtual cycle, I think it was last week, wasn't it, for St. Jude's, and the reward, so to speak, was him shaving his beard off, which he did yesterday live on stream, and I was there to witness it, and it was amazing. I did a donation myself, and I for sure got my money's worth. Yeah, yesterday finally we got an email with a basically a letter from the CEO of said Nextcloud provider, and so they wrote, okay, so they had migrated Nextcloud instances from one infrastructure to the other, which was before that, before the incident, and even that migration didn't go right. They did realize that migrating, what was it, from S3 to local storage or something, didn't quite work well, so they left everything on S3 just to not endanger data. So we got a new Nextcloud instance, and but we still were using the old file storage that was based on S3 apparently. What caused the incident was they then deprovisioned the old instances with their storage. See what I'm getting at? since our new instance was still using the old S3 storage, our files were gone. Which is boy, what a mistake. And not having any backups for that is also interesting. So as I said, we were already moving to a different office collaboration software provider, SaaS provider anyway, so that problem is solved, and we are by now back, and everything is working, calendars are working, files are uploaded. I need to disable an automation that relies on my local Nextcloud folder. That is something that I'll have to take care of later. Balthasar's curious who this was. I'll keep that to myself. I still have I'm still dealing with, or I have acquaintances at said company, and even though I'm really unhappy about what happened, I will do my best to not burn any bridges there. Hey Jaden, welcome to the stack. Yeah, we'll have to talk about your programming skills. Maybe you'd like to book a course on monospacementor.com. But other than that, welcome. And again, this is my office hour, even though I'm just catching up with stuff. I think I'm done catching up. So again, if you have any questions, go to qa.monospacementor.com and I'll do my best to answer them, because office hour means you ask questions, I answer them. That's all that's going to happen today on this stream. We're going to do this for about an hour, and then we'll see how far we'll get. I just realized my button here doesn't post to Twitch. So let's do that manually. Click the link to qa.monospacementor.com and I'll get your question on screen. Until then, I'll just refuel my coffee. Hey Praxeus, how you doing? Huge storm last night and rough morning. I'm not sure got any questions today, but I'm excited to hear what y'all are learning. Well, feel free to lurk and learn. I can actually go and check why the QA button doesn't post. Didn't I build that into... what did just happen? Sorry, that was a misclick. I was confused myself. Apparently I accidentally clicked in OBS and switched to my microphone scene, so you were able to hear me but not see me. Now, let's see. Rules, info, Q&A. Here we go. Send chat message. ¿Por qué no haces un mensaje? Let's see. That's a Twitch thingy. Integrations. Use Twitch. If I trigger that manually, what happens then? Huh. This time it worked. How strange. There is a question. Why does everyone blame DNS for everything? If you are at all active on social media, you'll see people always blaming DNS. Yeah. And Fragberg is perfectly right. The answer is because it's always DNS, of course. But taking the question more seriously, I think it's just a meme on being the most basic, the most basic things, the infrastructure services that we take for granted the most. Often are actually the root cause of issues, even though you don't expect it to. I had once issues with reaching one of my DNS records, and it was simply because I forgot to finish my CNAME entry with a dot. And therefore, since the dot wasn't there, my domain got added and resulting in a completely wrong name. And that way, that way it was actually DNS, even though it was pilot error in the end. I mean, it's not always DNS, but it definitely is always DNS. Praxeus says, and DNS records are done wrong a lot. Looking at UMX records. Yep. I mean, DNS is one of the examples where you have an infrastructure service that is highly redundant. You can run many DNS servers in parallel serving the same information. So if one goes down, there will be others that can still serve the same information. DNS is pretty reliable, even though it mainly uses UDP as its transport protocol. It doesn't change that much. It's not like a database or something. I mean, depending on the domain you're running, you have dynamically changing DNS records, but in most cases, I'd say DNS is pretty static. It's just your www, your MX records, and that's basically it. And so this doesn't change all the time. And therefore, you would assume that everything is working all the time. And then it turns out it isn't. Port 53 for exfiltration, says Praxeus. Yeah, you can pretty much assume that port 53 is excluded in firewalls almost all the time, simply because DNS is so important. However, I mean, as far as I recall, Microsoft, for example, made some changes that DNS can be now blocked on a MS-managed network where workstations can't do DNS queries anymore. And it's not about a firewall, or it's the... I don't know what I'm talking about. I just heard something on a podcast recently, but it's too hazy. I think it was something like the Microsoft Windows firewall now not allowing DNS queries anymore, except for specific permissions or something like that. But yeah, since I'm not a Windows user, I have no practical experience on that area. Bethesda says, speaking of DNS, I've been debating on migrating the house over to DNS over TLS. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Unfortunately, many internet providers have discovered that DNS queries are a good way to track people as well. Even though everyone uses HTTPS by now for their web traffic, your DNS queries are still usually unencrypted, and so people can actually track the websites you're visiting, and having something like DNS over TLS to specific name servers that support this is a good way to limit your exposure in this regard. And Proxy is sharing a practical tip. Highly recommend running your own DNS server internally, which then forwards everything via DNS, via secure DNS, basically. If it's DNSSEC or DNS over TLS. Wait, what? This is not a question, but it's still worth discussing. Let's share horror stories of silly ports being blocked. My favorite was learning that SSH is so commonly blocked, you can use port 443 on ssh.github.com to bypass blocking. I mean, yes, SSH is commonly blocked. I don't know why, actually. It's always a nuisance when I'm in a coffee shop or something, and I can't SSH into my servers, and then I'll have to first try and get a VPN somewhere from where I then can use SSH. But the resolution for this issue is brilliant. Setting up a different domain name, ssh.github.com, where you can actually abuse port 443, that's ingenious. That is hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. And yeah, I love it. I love it. Bethesda shared Technetium DNS. Yep, that's a very capable but uncomplicated DNS server. Using SSH over the HTTPS port in the GitHub documentation. This is amazing. Bethesda says, and that's actually a good advice, if I'm on a PvP network like a coffee shop, VPN goes on. I should make that more of a habit, to be honest, yeah. Praxeus, did you mean RTFM the article SSH over HTTPS? Let's take a look at that link. If using HTTPS, cloning with credential caching is not an option. You can attempt to clone using an SSH connection made over the HTTPS port. Proxy servers may interfere. Yeah, that's correct. If there's a forced proxy in between that grabs all the traffic that goes to 443, which what purpose would that have, though? Proxy, because you could, I mean, it's not if you're not trying to do a man-in-the-middle attack, why would you proxy TLS traffic? Anyway, if that's not an option, you can still SSH to a different port. That's amazing. Yeah, I don't think it's funny enough to do an RTFM on that, but the idea is funny. The text itself isn't, but this is amazing. And yes, places blocking VPNs is terrible. I've had that many times as well. When I was in some kind of a public place and wasn't able to get my VPN going. Bertha says, speaking of city blocked ports, I remember a financial institution I did support that wanted to block 443 because they had us doing man-in-the-middle attacks. Okay, yeah, you can do that, of course. But that's a little bit like if you don't want to step into dog poo, saw off your leg. And Praxis says, I just wish my Nick would wash its hands after a three-way handshake. It doesn't? Oh, that's gross. Again, let's see if that chat message does get triggered now. Otherwise, I'll get triggered. If you have any questions, go to qa.monospacementor.com. Post your questions there. Ask me anything. No promise that I'll answer everything, but let's give it a try. I've already fired up my iPad, so maybe ask me something that I need to draw for an answer. I love how you are supporting me with your questions. And answers with those questions. What does Jeff Bezos do before bed? Well, put on his pajamas on. I need a soundboard, I think. Another softball question. What is your favorite color? It's orange, actually. And you know why? Up until quite recently, my favorite color was blue. Then I saw that you can get framework laptops with a custom screen bezel that's orange. And in that moment, orange became my favorite color. By now, I have an orange iPhone case. I have an orange pen. I have an orange pocket knife in my bag. And I also dream of once eventually getting a framework laptop, and it'll have that orange bezel. You can bet on that. Piffer says, I did the same transition from royal blue to orange. Brilliant. I'm not 100% sure, but isn't that actually a transition between complement colors? Isn't orange the complement color to blue? So maybe there is actually an aesthetic connection that made that transition easier. Oh, both are asking the hard questions here. Mr. Dracula, hailer of it as the best color scheme ever. Who's also wrong, but we still love you. Thank you. Likes a color not in Dracula's palette. That's correct. Actually, you would have expected me to pick something else over blue, something like purple or so, but yeah. I mean, there is a yellow in the Dracula color palette that is almost an orange, so not sure if I'm completely off. Let's see. About. That's not it. Where are the actual colors? I'm pretty sure somewhere there are the actual colors, right? Contribute. Here we go. Color palette. Oh, there's actually an orange in there. Look at that. That's why I don't trust Balthasar in terms of IDE themes. He certainly has his skills, but in terms of color themes, not really sure. Pilfer says, I'm a DevSec guy, not a designer. You and me both, brother. I can't design myself out of a tough spot. And Beth is confirming that actually orange is opposite blue on the color wheel. So that's what I meant, these complementary colors, something like that. Complementary colors, here we go. Color theory, yeah, it's basically the color wheel then, yeah. And yeah, orange is over here and blue is over here, so they are actually. Well, 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 that's that question answered. What is your mother's maiden name, the name of your first pet, and the street you grew up on? The only things that's missing is my favorite album, I think. And I'll post that on the answers on everything of that will be posted on the server room, my community, on which not only I share all my answers to my security questions, but also other knowledge as do all the other members of the server room. It's a safe space. It's a pleasant place to be in. It's a friendly bunch of people inhabiting the community. And we do all sorts of events there as well. And just this week, we did a hot seat where I gave feedback to one of our community members who had a project that they did as an assessment for a job, which they passed with flying colors. And I was able to actually point out bit by bit why they definitely deserve that. The video for that is ready to be uploaded. I just need to set up Bunny CDN so I can start uploading videos to my own platform, because I don't want to depend on big tech anymore. I could as well upload that to YouTube as I did before, but instead I'm going to host my videos myself, and I hope to get that ready later. After this stream, then I'll post the video recording of that hot seat session to the forum. So if you want to join a very friendly community that is focused on everyone growing, learning, having fun doing IT, software development, system administration, and get a lot of valuable knowledge, then check out the serverroom.sh. Our membership fees are reasonable, and I think you'll be getting your money's worth. Did I do that well, Praxeus? Pilfer's asking, if your SSH private key was how much money you had in your bank account, how rich would you be? Answer in base 64 encoded strings, please. So, yeah. That would be a huge sum, I think. But, I mean, I can see that you're trying to trick me there, but it won't work, because if you paste my private key into your banking application, it will fail because it starts with RSA private key, which doesn't really translate into a number. So, There's another question. What are your thoughts on OpenFaaS? I don't have any, I'll be honest. I have never even dabbled in serverless computing or edge computing, things like that. OpenFaaS being a function as a service, so basically something that allows you to build your own Amazon AWS Lambda. I guess I'm not front-endy enough to do much of that stuff, even though I'm sure there are also other use cases that can benefit from using this kind of cloud computing. I just never had a convincing use case to get into that. So in this case, I'm afraid I don't have a valid or helpful answer. Let me ask you back, would you recommend I look into that? Do you think it's a good tool to have in your toolbox? Pilfer's answered yes. Okay. Making a note here. Look into OpenFaaS. Check out OpenFaaS. He types on his orange phone. Pilfer's pushing all my buttons, saying it's self-hosted, helps you avoid vendor lock-in, is containerized, and scales out easily. Those are all great arguments, to be honest. I'm very much on the self-hosting trip at the moment. I'm so fed up with big tech, the whole AI debacle, and all these walled gardens that people now find themselves in, realizing that they were being had all this time. And I finally came to the conclusion that I can do something about this problem by applying my teaching and my knowledge transfer skills to people who either want to run their own services, so maybe small business owners who want to set up their own website on a private cheap VPS or something like that, or cater to people who want to actually serve those end users. I don't think every end user on the earth should be able to set up their own Linux server. It would be great, but I don't think it's going to be realistic. I'm not completely out of this world, but what I think is we could have so many more businesses, freelancers, freelance system administrators, people like that, who could cater to these people, who can set up a cheap VPS for someone, maybe for family members, or at a fee for friends and family and neighbors and things like that. And everyone helping each other out in this way. Maybe I'm a Linux nerd, dreaming of a future where everyone helps each other, getting their own Linux server. But I think there is at least a realistic component in there, and that's why I really want to help by actually teaching people to do these things, and definitely the community workshops that we are doing in the server room will also be test balloons for workshops that I'll then offer as public workshops where people can join and learn how to set up a simple VPS and git push their static content to a small web server running there, and not having to use any web hosting services like Squarespace, where they are locked into the platform and will have a hard time switching when the vendor comes up with the idea they could feed all website content they're hosting into a large language model. Pilfers says, I think your education first approach is solid though. That's amazing. Thank you for that. Let me catch up with all other posts here. Piver says, I'm also over 33 and becoming a curmudgeon with the industry. I think it's not necessarily an age thing, I think, because I got 53, 54 without being too grumpy about things. But I think by now a threshold has been crossed. And yeah, so I'm really starting to become anti-capitalist and anti-big tech and all these things. Bethesda said, function as a service certainly doesn't need to be front-end construct, but I personally haven't found enough of usage for FAS in any of my networks that I never got further than, oh, hey, I deployed this, that's cool, away with you. Yeah, even if I had tried it, I wouldn't have come beyond that myself, I don't think. Praxeus says, industry curmudgeonry starts at 22 and it's perfect by 28. If you start later, then these ages adjust accordingly. As long as you end up there eventually, I guess. Piver says, so I have a background in security and I'm split on how accessible infrastructure is for non-DevOps, DevSecOps folks. On one hand, it's great that people can be productive and make cool stuff, but on the other, you have people who don't understand the tech they're using, creating loads of problems. I'm well aware of that. That's a very valid point. Definitely. I mean, my main job is still being the CTO of a managed hosting company, and we do that because we are convinced that proper hosting should be done by professionals. We cater to web agencies, actually, and the best customers we can get is a web agency who try to do hosting themselves and then realized how much of a pain in the ass that is if you have to reboot servers at night, even though you should do a customer briefing early next morning. Yeah, I was definitely also very indifferent towards the whole indie web movement so far, because I thought, well, yeah, it doesn't really sound realistic to have everyone run their own Linux server, is it? I mean, the florist next door, should they run their own website? So I was really critical of the whole indie web movement, and I was not really very interested because I thought it would really be, as I alluded to earlier, very Linux nerdy, dreaming of everyone running their own Linux server. Yeah, that's a completely different world, isn't it? But I found myself in recent years rethinking many perspectives, and one of them is this one, where I thought, well, it doesn't have to be the flower shop themselves who run their own business. There is a middle ground between every writer or artist running their own web server and everything being hosted centrally by just a few central big businesses. Headringer, thanks for the follow. I really appreciate it. I think this middle ground is many small businesses catering to these people, getting paid accordingly, and happy to see you follow as well, Pilthers. Thank you. So yeah, this is also an economic thing of having many businesses catering to these needs instead of just a few big ones. Piver says, oh man, I can only imagine how many vulnerable WordPress plugins you guys deal with. Actually, we don't. I mean, our first line of defense is that we say everything on the application level is not our problem. If your system, your WordPress instance, for example, is vulnerable, that's your problem. Only stuff that pertains to the hosting layers below is our problem, and that's where we draw the line. Of course, there needs to be collaboration because oftentimes things aren't as clear-cut. And that's where I think our company has a huge advantage because we have a very non-scalable but collaborative approach, and where we help especially developers on the web agency side with optimizing their database queries and things like that. The reason that vulnerabilities aren't much of our concern is that because we run highly available infrastructure where there's a lot of redundancy, the whole application code is on a read-only file system. And the only way to deploy code on our infrastructure is using Git, pushing code to a central Git repository, and from there our deployment then takes care of getting this on our application servers, and therefore vulnerabilities usually don't impact our infrastructure, except maybe if they draw a lot of power or create a lot of web traffic, and then we'll probably shut down the website until it's fixed. But these are things that our monitoring can pick up. It's not that a single vulnerability can then infect an application server and then do a lot of damage to the underlying hosting infrastructure. That way, we've been pretty lucky, knocking on wood here. We've been running this service for 14 years now, and I think even though running WordPress and Drupal on a read-only file system is very confusing to people at first, especially when they try to online update their plugins, but it's definitely, among other things, a safety improvement. Praxeus said, I'm comfortable with the MSP business model, but I like it when their clients hold them accountable. Yeah, of course. Flower Shop needs to have scalability, really need to be on a full infrastructure as code stack. And in that way, yeah, Terraform is always the answer. Making a note here, offer course, Kubernetes for florists. But we're not here to joke. This is a serious show. This is the it's not the Freistyle Box office hour, it's the Monospace office hour. Confusing my roles here. Post to qa.monospacementor.com when you have any questions on Linux system administration, software engineering, on anything else. I'll get it on screen. It's already up over here on screen. And I'll try to answer your questions if I can. Kubernetes for Florist sounds like a talk title. Yes, it does. Making a note here. Apply for next KubeCon. Only one person in chat could have asked this question. What is your favorite programming language and why is it Perl? It was Perl for a long time. I still like Perl, but only for nostalgic reasons, I guess. I haven't been doing Perl in more than 10 years now, but that's only because Perl got replaced by something very similar, and that's Ruby. And so my favorite programming language is Ruby, has been Ruby for more than 10 years now, and I'm pretty sure will stay my favorite language for a few more years at least. And I love Ruby for the same reason for which I love... I love Ruby for the same reason as I did love Perl, because it's very versatile. I can do system administrative stuff, I can parse files, I can replace tools like awk and sed with Perl and Ruby, and yeah. And yes, Balthasar, I do like languages that are very expressive, where you can actually express a negation with a language keyword. Pilfers is out of questions. Well, that is out of the question. Piver taking a shortcut and asking in chat, what are your thoughts on amberlang.com? Personally, I love the concept of a higher level language that transpiles to Bash. What? Are you fucking serious? We've started this stream with a hilarious topic, and I guess we are ending it with one as well. Let me see. amber-lang.com. This is so bizarre. Programming language compiled to Bash, and it's not even an April Fool's joke. Write your script in a modern, type-safe and runtime-safe programming language that handles many bugs and mistakes during compilation process. I mean, if you put it this way, it doesn't sound as insane anymore, because if this is serious, I can see that it actually valuable, because it means you have an underlying runtime that is more ubiquitous than the Java runtime ever was. You can run it on every Linux server, on any WSL instance that has Bash. But you can actually program in a full-fledged programming language that probably has much saner syntax than Bash has, with its strange conditionals and square brackets and stuff like that. And apparently it's even type safe. So it's a typed language. And I mean, we have lots of stuff that transpiles to JavaScript. We had CoffeeScript and all these other languages up to TypeScript then. Why not do the same in terms of running stuff in Bash? I guess the compiled result is not going to be pretty, but who cares if you can have source code that is actually readable, has a modern syntax, is runtime safe and type safe. You have to admire the creativity that goes into something like that. Really thinking out of the box. To say, yeah, nobody wants to really write bash scripts, and people like me keep reiterating, don't write bash scripts that are longer than 3 or 5 lines. Everything else should be done in a proper programming language. But saying, yeah, but then I have to install the programming language, or I have to do the whole debug compile cycle over and over. Having a language that you can compile into bash and then have it run on any machine that comes with the runtime built in, it's actually really creative. I don't think I would have ever come up with something like that. Let's see, data types. It has a text type, numbers, booleans. It has a null type and an array. And since the list ends here, I would assume arrays can have indices or keys. No. No nested arrays either. Of course, yeah, it needs to compile down to bash, and bash, of course, doesn't have hashes. There is no hash in bash. But still, I like it. Alternatively, I only found out recently by someone posting about new shell that new shell not only is a great idea in terms of interactive use, where you can actually have structured data getting passed from one tool to the other, but also new shell has its own scripting language that also is much more mature than the shells of old, like bash and Z shell, even for compatibility reasons. So new shell seems to be another contender of having a shell-based language that is actually workable, but going back to what I said earlier, new shell requires you to install new shell as the language runtime, and this one doesn't. You know what? I'll look into this. Let's go to GitHub and start it. And that'll set a reminder for myself to check it out. Piver says, keep Amber scripts in Git, then deploy build After Effects. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it seemed like a silly idea, but thinking it through, it's still funny, but useful too. So here's another question. And since we are past the hour, I think I'll make this the last question for today. It's always fun to look at new tools, but learning how to evaluate a new tool is a skill. Do you have any guidance for evaluating new tools, and perhaps more importantly, guidance on evaluating when it's the right time to consider a tool change? Ooh. That is a huge topic. That might actually become a newsletter topic for one of my upcoming newsletters. And if you're interested in that, you can subscribe for free. Every Monday morning, I send out a DevOps newsletter with a mentor monologue, which is basically a column that I write on a specific topic. And this could be one of those topics. And updates on what's happening on the server room, my community of practice for DevOps people, and a few reading recommendations, articles that I found useful myself. So if you'd like to get that, feel free to subscribe to my newsletter. It's called News from the Server Room. Let me think about that question for a second, because that is actually an important topic and not quite easy to answer, I think. Let's see, do you have any guidance for evaluating new tools and on evaluating when it's the right time to consider a tool change? Let's start with the second part, tool change. I think we are all aware that lusting after the next shiny thing is quite common in our industry. The next editor. So let's switch from Sublime Text to Vim or to NeoVim, and then switch to Helix, and then switch to Zed. Because that's the grass always seems greener on the other side. I think everyone eventually comes to a point where they realize, okay, this is costing me a lot of time, and in the end, I could have stayed with my previous tool and would have been probably as efficient and effective. Going after the next shiny thing can really be a huge distraction and a time sink that won't yield the proper results related to the time you put into it. And so I think it's a good idea to be critical of switching tools, because switching cost is a term for a reason. It costs time, and by proxy, it costs money. And so I think I've become very reluctant to change tools. That being said, sometimes there is a point where your current tool might not fulfill your needs anymore. I might be at this point, for example, in terms of actually my editor. I've been a NeoVim user for quite some time, but some... Oh, look at that. Praxeus redeemed RTFM for RFC 1606. We'll get to that. We'll end this stream with the RFC 1606. But let me finish that thought first. I'm actually, I've just paid for a JetBrains license because I intend to switch from NeoVim to RubyMine and maybe other of their tools as well. And so sometimes this is a good step if your current tool, for example, keeps tripping you up. And I have reached that point where the LSP support doesn't really work all the time, where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I don't want to try out new plugins all the time and then fight the incompatibilities with my existing plugins and things like that. So paying for a tool where someone actually made sure it's really, really polished and works all the time, or at least if there is something that doesn't work, I'll get an update that I can install, and then this actually fixes stuff instead of causing new issues. That's something that I'll happily pay for, because time is very rare for me. It's my most rare resource and therefore my most precious resource. So sometimes switching tools does make sense. Oh, hey, Julian. Welcome to the stack. Long time no see. Happy to see you. How's life? Exegete says RubyMine's jump to definition is borderline life-changing, especially in heavily meta-programmed apps. That's true. What I also things that also impress me a lot is all the refactoring support, where you can easily extract variables or extract methods from existing methods and things like that. That can actually save you a lot of time. But I'm not here to shill for JetBrains products. What I really am hinting at is be very critical if the new tool will actually make a difference, or is it just about it being different? Yes, sometimes we need to stimulate ourselves. We need to get that dopamine hit of trying a new tool and exploring something new. I get it. I do that all the time too. But for example, I would think a lot before I inflict the same on my team by introducing a new tool or forcing everyone to switch to something. So yeah. I'd be wary of changing tooling willy-nilly. Which nicely leads into the first part of the question, guidance for evaluating new tools. I think you should really put some time into evaluating a tool. Not just read the blurbs on the website or on the GitHub README, but really put it through its paces and see if the tool will actually add something valuable to your existing workflow. If it doesn't, if it's just another of the same with different hotkeys, then I probably would say, yeah, if you want to play, then do it in your spare time. But I guess that gets us back to the old adage of never change a winning team, huh? Chugging Coffee joining us with a light recommendation. I had RubyMine for a while and then found out others were saying you can get their full IDE, IntelliJ IDEA, and the plugins for that essentially bring in the full suite of the specific languages. Go plugin equals Golang, Ruby plugin, RubyMine functionality. Yep, it's basically some core system, which is IntelliJ IDEA or IDEA, and then language-specific stuff on top. Me having a tooling budget allowed me to simply get the all-in license, so I can now install any of the IDEs. For example, if I continue working on my WordPress plugin to integrate Discourse, my Discourse forum for the server room, with my membership management on the monospacementor.com website, then I can also go into PHP Storm and work in there. Coffee following up with, it's probably not a perfect one-to-one, but something to check out. Yep. Licensing change is super easy too. Yep. And what pushed me over the edge to actually get out my credit card for a license today was they just sent out an update to customers about their AI policy. And in short, it's exactly the policy that you want to get from a vendor. They have an AI tool in their IDE, but check it out. It's perfectly sensible and non-intrusive. Oh, you're right, yeah. You mean it's actually their products are an IntelliJ IDEA. Yeah, makes sense. That might have gone over my head there. All right, folks. I didn't, since I wasn't a customer up until earlier today, I saw it on Mastodon. One of the people I follow, actually someone who I worked with in the past and respect a lot, posted about the terms, and he actually posted an excerpt from these terms, and it made perfect sense. The terms are something like we make a point of not using your code and your data to feed our LLMs. Stuff doesn't leave your machine, things like that. And it ticked all my boxes in terms of, yeah, that's how you do LLM support. I can actually look it up for you. Give me just a second. Going to my other browser. Let's see if FanP can get me that. Is it in? It should be in my lists, shouldn't it? Give me just a second. I think I have a list in my other account. Let's switch. Ooh, interesting. Something's still wrong with my Mastodon instance. FanP has issues with getting access to my account there. Huh. Okay. Strange, because the web interface itself does work. Okay. That warrants some more investigation. No. There we go. And copy link to post. Here you go. You're right, I should actually post that on Discord as well. And if you'd like to join our Discord link is here for you to use. Looks like JetBrains is doing AI correctly. Bam. Well. There's one last question, and after that we'll do the RFC. What is the best Rust rewrite tool you love so far, and why is it ripgrep? It might actually be ripgrep, actually. Let me think. Yeah, if we're talking about rewrites of existing Unix tools, and not something like LazyGit, which I think is written in Go, not in Rust. If you're talking about replacements, it's probably ripgrep. I do use other tools as well, like FD or BAT or something like that, but I very rarely use them. I don't think I can add more to that. Of course it's ripgrep, says Praxeus. Yep. All right, so RFC 1606, huh? Let's see. Let me quickly scan over it. I see. Ooh, that's a lot of good stuff. You know what? We'll do it in full. Prepare your clip buttons. This is a historical perspective on the usage of IP version 9. Status of this memo. This memo provides information for the Internet community. This memo does not specify an Internet standard of any kind. Distribution of this memo is unlimited. Abstract. This paper reviews the usages of the old IP version protocol. It considers some of its successes and its failures. Introduction. The take-up of the network protocol TCP/IP v9 has been phenomenal over the last few years. Gone are the days when there were just a few million hosts and the network was understood. As the IP version 9 protocol comes to the end of its useful life, once again, due to address space exhaustion, we look back at some of the success of the protocol. Routing. The up to 42 deep hierarchy of routing levels built into IPv9 must have been one of the key features for its wide deployment. The ability to assign a whole network or group of networks to an electronic component must be seen as one of the reasons for its take-up. The use of the compact disk hologram units is typical of the usage. They typically have a level 37 network number assigned to each logical part and a level 36 network number assigned to the whole device. This allows the CDH management protocol to control the unit as a whole and the high street vendor to do remote diagnostics on discrete elements of the device. This still allows sub-chip routing to be done using the 38th level addressing to download new nanocode. As yet, no requirement has been found for levels 40 to 42, with level 39 still being used for experimental interrogation of atomic structure of components where required. Allocation. The vast number space of the IPv9 protocol has also allowed allocation to be done in a straightforward manner. Typically, most high-street commercial internet providers issue a range of 1 billion addresses to each house. The addresses are then dynamically partitioned into subnet hierarchies, allowing groups of 1 million addresses to be allocated for each discrete unit, for example, room or floor, etc. The allocation of subgroups then to controllers such as light switches, main sockets and similar is then done from each pool. The allocation process is again done in a hierarchical zoned way, with each major application requesting a block of addresses from its controller. In this way, the light bulb requests an address block from the light switch in turn from the electrical system, which in turn requests one from the room or floor controller. This has been found to be successful due to the enormous range of addresses available and contention for the address space being without problems typically. Whilst there are still many addresses unallocated, the available space has been sharply decreased. The discovery of intelligent life on other solar systems with the parallel discovery of a faster-than-light transport stack is the main cause. This enables real-time communication with them and has made the allocation of world-size address spaces necessary at the level 3 routing hierarchy. There is still only one global spatial level 2 galaxy-wide network required for this galaxy, although the establishment of permanent space stations in deep space may start to exhaust this. This allows level 1 to be used for inter-galaxy routing. The most pressing problem now is the case of parallel universes. Of course, there is the danger of assuming that there is no higher extrapolation than parallel universes. Up to now, the hacking into and setting off holo recorder devices to the wrong channel from remote galaxies has not been confirmed and appears to be attributable to finger problem with the remote control while traveling home from the office. Applications. The introduction of body monitors as IPv9 addressable units injected into the bloodstream has been rated as inconclusive. Whilst being able to have devices lodged in the heart, kidneys, brain, etc., sending out SNMP-v9 trap messages at critical events has been a useful monitoring tool for doctors. The use of the bloodstream as both a delivery and a communication highway has been problematic. The crosstalk between the signals moving through the bloodstream and the close proximity of nerves has meant that patients suffering multiple events at once can go into violent spasm. This, coupled with early problems with broadcast storms tending to make patients' blood boil, have led to a rethink on this whole procedure. Also, the requirement to wear the silly satellite dish that has led to feelings of embarrassment, except in California, where it is now the latest trend. The usage of IPv9 addressable consumer packaging has been a topic of hot debate. The marketing people see it as a godsend, being able to get feedback on how products are actually used. Similarly, the recycling is much improved by use of directed broadcast. All those packages composed of cardboard respond please. Consumers are not so keen on this, seeing it as an invasion of privacy. The introduction of the handy-dandy directed stack zapper, which is also rumored to be IPv9 aware, sending directed broadcasts on the local food package net, effectively resetting the network mask to all ones, has made this an area of choice. The advent of the IPv9 magazine was universally approved of. Being able to ask a magazine where its contents page was the most useful of the features. However, combined with the networked newspaper/magazine rack, the ability to find out where you left the magazine with the article that was concerned with something about usage of lawnmowers in outer space is obvious. The ability to download reading habits automatically into the house controller and therefore alert the reader of articles of similar ilk is seen as marginal. Alleged querying of this information to discover deviant behavior in persons within political office by members of contending parties is suspected. Sneakernet, as pioneered by shoe specialist Skoll, is seen to be a failure. The market was just not ready for shoes that could forward detailed analysis of food odor to manufacturers. Which gets us to manufacture. Of course, cost is one of the issues that was not considered when IPv9 was designed. It took a leap of imagination to believe that one day anything that wished to be could be IPv9 addressable. It was assumed that IPv9 protocol machines would drop in price, as with general chip technology. Few people would have foreseen the advance in genetic manipulation that allowed viruses to be instructed to build nanotechnology IPv9 protocol machines by the billion for the price of a grain of sugar. Or similarly, the nanorobots that could insert and wire these in place. The recent research in quark-to-quark transistors shows some promise and may allow specially built atoms to be used as switches. The manufacturers of these will be so expensive, maybe up to 10 cents an IPv9 stack, as to be prohibitive except for the most highly demanding niches. Conclusions. Those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. Let me catch up with chat. Praxeus was excited for the RFC voice. I do have an RFC voice. It's the same as my talk voice in the sense of conference talk voice. Oh, Praxeus, I knew I made a mistake when I didn't start my kid off with RFCs for bedtime. Now they have expectations of stories. And Praxeus says, thank you. Thank you, Praxeus. It's your channel points, so you deserved this dramatic reading of RFC 1606. And with that, let's check this off as redeemed. And that's it for today. That's the office hour. It was more than more like a 1.5 office hour, but anyway, this was fun. And we'll go and check out if there's someone we can raid. And then I will sail off. Well, not quite into the weekend. I still have to do a few support requests. But other than that, there isn't too much choice. Well, anyway. Let's check in with Theo. That's always a good choice. So, yeah, we'll raid B7H Theo, aka Theo. And with that, I'll be off. Checking Coffee says, have a good day, everyone. Have a good day. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for all the hilarious links that we got to discuss today. I'll be back next week, and until then, take care.